We strongly warn viewers to exercise caution before we start. The following is the exact federal courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as published by Inner Press, and is intended solely for educational and entertainment reasons. Justin Combs' decision to testify against his own father was unexpected. The prosecution's table was the center of attention in the tense room until the side door opened and someone entered. Echoed were Justin's gasps. There was no announcement, no prepared statement, just Justin coming forward on his own, and even the judge froze. He had remained mute up until that point as his father's name circulated through court leaks, headlines, and hushed audio recordings deemed too upsetting to be made public. However, something had changed. It might have been the growing evidence. Perhaps he felt betrayed by the man who reared him. Perhaps it was listening to those tapes played in private. Whatever it was. Justin wasn't on stage as a famous person's kid, and he was done being devoted to a father who had showed him no loyalty. As a young guy who had seen too much and said too little, he was there, and the courtroom was unprepared for what they were about to hear when he started talking. Because Justin's revelations regarding Diddy, the parties, the control, and the manipulation weren't merely explosive. It served as a warning. The Diddy trial got off to a typical start. As they waited for the next planned witness, the lawyers murmured strategy, the reporters crouched in their assigned rows, and the room was alive with low-volume chatter. However, there was no announcement, no entourage, and no legal team present when Justin Combs entered the courtroom by himself when the side doors opened. The space was altered. A pin could be heard dropping. Some believed it to be a stunt, while others believed it to be an error. However, Justin moved slowly and deliberately, his mouth clenched tight and his gaze set forward. Declared this to be true. With a raised eyebrow, the judge took action. He abruptly sat up, his face devoid of color, after reclining back confidently at the defense table. Justin made no eye contact as he proceeded directly to the witness stand. He never even looked at his dad. Today, I was not summoned to testify. Justin started. I requested to talk. Because what Justin was going to say wasn't included in any media narrative, the judge permitted it, and the trial changed course immediately. It wasn't a leak on social media. It was something that had plagued him for years, something that started in private at home when a kid saw his father change into someone he didn't know. I've never spoken in my life, he said. I've stood by him at events and supported him in front of the media. I've proudly carried his last name, but it doesn't change what I witnessed, what I went through, or who caused it. He turned to Diddy a little. You did. According to Justin's testimony in court, his family's history began with what his father referred to as celebrations of success. Regular family get-togethers and the way they were presented were the source of it. It was intended to be a typical, filthy, enjoyable venue for guests. Nothing spectacular, just music networking, and a place for the top players in the business to meet. I didn't question it because I'd been to events like that since I was a teenager. However, Justin realized something was wrong as he grew older. Usually it was at one of his father's estates, with black SUVs in front and security around as soon as visitors entered. The first warning sign should have been the theft of phones. They said that it was done to preserve the guests' privacy. However, it seemed as though they didn't want anything to leak. For more breaking news and in-depth coverage of high-profile cases, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you believe this article to be informative. At first, Justin explained, he was protected from what transpired in specific rooms. The music was low and odd, rhythmic, ambient, and almost mesmerizing, and the lights were dim throughout the home. Mirrors were everywhere, but no cameras were in sight. Someone seemed to be observing all the while. According to Justin, his father progressively exposed him to more of what took place at these gatherings as he grew older. It's time, he added. You understand how we maintain our position. And he grinned. It was a test of allegiance, not of affection. Justin claimed that at the age of 21, he thought they were going to talk about the family business when he followed his father into a back room. He was deeply shaken by what he witnessed. Men and women, some of whom he knew from the music industry, were performing. Some appeared uneasy, as if they weren't there on purpose. His father was controlling everything as if it were the most commonplace thing in the world, and there were other people watching as if it were amusement. Justin stopped and took a deep breath. The point was that I didn't know how to get out. You're in once you're in. Even as his son. Justin's voice remained steady yet lifeless. A few days following this incident, in private, I faced my father. I informed him that what I saw made me uneasy. He simply said, laughing, "The real world operates in this manner. We keep everyone in line like this. One day you'll be in charge of all this," he murmured, putting his arm around me. According to Justin's testimony, the fear he felt at that precise moment was unheard of. I became aware that I was not being raised as a son. He claimed that I was being prepared to be the heir to something sinister. He started to see the manipulation at that point. My father's calls would reach me. A person's career would suddenly encounter challenges after declining an invitation. A collaboration that was promised would not materialize. Suddenly, a media story would surface. I witnessed it happen to folks I respected and knew. A young artist who was signed to his father's label in 2019 was a gifted child, possibly the most natural talent I'd ever seen. But he questioned something at one of these events and attempted to leave early, according to Justin. His contract was terminated 3 days later. My father claimed to be challenging to collaborate with. In real time, I saw this child's dream come to an end. He surveyed the courtroom. My father did more than destroy careers. Justin claimed that the reason I'm here today is because he destroyed others. After pausing, Justin leaned closer to the microphone and looked at the jury. The parties weren't the only thing. He stated it was the system. He started writing down everything he saw after that. Justin clarified that his father's impact extended much beyond the realm of music. He had contacts in every industry, including the media, the police, and CEOs. People would call my father if they wanted a problem solved. My father knew just who to call if he needed things hushed up. He described in his testimony a particular evening in 2020 when he heard his father talking on the phone. An incident at a hotel had someone in a panic. A girl suffered harm. My father told me that was already resolved. The video is no longer available. Just make sure she receives this payout and NDA. The staff won't speak in the morning. According to Justin, he went up against his father once more. I questioned him about the girl's fate. He didn't tell me anything that wasn't compensated. I recognized then that this was more than just a party issue. People were suffering. He explained how terror, favors, and money were used by his father to keep him under control. He had connections, possibilities, protection, and access to everything if you were in his inner circle. But as soon as you crossed the line, everything vanished, and occasionally you did too. According to Justin's testimony, he started to turn away from his father's empire. I began to justify my absence from events. I no longer invited friends. I made an effort to construct something distinct. However, there was no true way out, just like with his son. He began to doubt my allegiance. He would phone me at any time to find out who I was with and where I was. After I discovered malware on my phone, he would have others follow me. Family must remain close, he stated when I questioned him. There are too many people that wish to ruin us. Justin said that all facets of his life were under control. My connections, my friends, and my professional decisions. In reality, nothing belonged to me. Everything had to work for him. Justin's voice became deeper and quieter. I was silent for years. I told myself it wasn't as horrible as it seemed or that it was usual. However, as the facts in this case began to come to light, he claimed that when he first learned about the tapes and films being shown in court, he didn't think they could be as horrible as they were represented. My father then called me, not to ask if I was comfortable with all of this coming out, nor to offer an explanation or an apology. He called to remind me that we close ranks and to be faithful to our family. When assaulted, the floor seemed to have fallen out from under Justin. It was not a love call. It has to do with control. After all those years, parties, and business lessons, everything finally came together at that point. All of this was a part of a system that was intended to foster complicity. Justin claimed to have spent the entire night going over the events, gatherings, phone calls, threats, and repercussions for anyone who voiced their opinions. I was involved, and everything was connected. He claimed that fear wasn't the breaking point, whether I wanted to be or not. It was accountability. I understood that I would be continuing the pattern if I remained silent. More lives would be lost and more people would be harmed. He told the court I couldn't live with that. He made his own contact with the prosecution. I assured them I was ready for everything they needed to know. Let me inform you, I was aware of the price. Some things, like basic human decency, are more important than familial devotion, even though I knew my father would never forgive me. He turned to face the jurors. I was more than a mere observer. I participated by keeping quiet. By turning my head away, I made it possible. Then you could count on him to stare at his father once more, but with a stronger tone this time. You relied on me to always keep you safe. As if ready to experience something he had struggled to forget, Justin closed his eyes for a second before continuing. I was asked if I had any tangible evidence by the prosecution. I paused, he said. However, I realized I had to be honest. For the previous 5 years, I had been recording dates, people, and happenings in my journal. When I could, I recorded discussions. I discovered documents in my father's office and snapped pictures of them. In particular, he described one document. It was a list of industry names with notes next to each one about financial control, family pressure, compliance, and resistance to leverage. It served as a manual for manipulation. Your Honor, the prosecutor came forward carrying a sealed evidence folder. This document should be entered as Exhibit 42. The bailiff carried it to the bench after the judge gave a nod. Justin attested that the names on that list were a replica of what he had discovered. These are people who went from being rising stars to industry instantly, whose careers terminated inexplicably, or who abruptly vanished from public life. Tales of caution, Justin clarified. Every name had a vulnerability next to it. Money was a factor for some. Others saw it as kinship. For many, it was something that was captured on tape during one of those gatherings. Justin explained the process via which he found the document. It happened following a rather sizable gathering at the Miami home. My father was in a meeting with his closest colleagues after everyone had left. I heard him talk about the book and the need to shift someone to the handled column. It wasn't business the way he said it. Something else was involved. According to Justin's testimony, he explored his private study after waiting until his father left for Los Angeles the following day. Behind his awards wall in a safe was the paperwork. I was familiar with the combo. My birthday was that day. Using my birth date to shield something so damaging still bothers me. He explained how he painstakingly took pictures of every page before giving it back precisely as he had found it. I had no idea what I would do with those pictures. I simply knew they might be important one day. According to Justin, he gave the prosecution complete control. They questioned me about why I gathered all of this. To be honest, I first believed that I might require protection at some point. Then, when the situation worsened, I understood that this evidence might be useful to others. A sealed audio file was introduced as evidence by the prosecutor. Is this one of the tapes you sent to our office, Mr. Combs? Justin gave a nod. That is from December 2022, indeed. My dad was talking to someone on the phone. It was a network executive, I think. An incident at one of the gatherings had led to claims from a young actress. My father describes in detail how her career would be ruined if she didn't sign an NDA during that call. Justin's poise faltered a bit. She would never work again, he continued, laughing, and she would be lucky to land a commercial in Nebraska. When he finished, he claimed to have enough individuals under his ownership to ensure it. In response to a question for additional recordings, Justin acknowledged that there were numerous discussions concerning payoffs, following people, and fabricating media reports to make issues go away. He described how he observed his father's enterprise for years. It was more than just entertainment or music. It was about parties, favors, connections, power, and the capacity to make or break individuals at pleasure. All of them served as instruments to establish duty. You had a piece of view once you grabbed anything from my father. Could you inform the court what this email chain and another document the prosecutor brought with them contain? Justin gave a nod. That is correspondence between my father and a number of radio station owners and officials from major labels. They are talking about an artist who declined to go to a private function. Through the emails, they plan how to make sure his new single never receives airtime, how to get his tour dates inexplicably canceled, and how to engage certain journalists in negative reporting. He turned to face his dad. The artist's career was essentially finished within 3 months of those emails. He was forced to return to his hometown. Finally. He was employed at a car dealership, I was told. Justin explained how he started to see trends. Individual careers weren't the only ones being ruined. It was methodical. Not only were those who crossed boundaries and those who dared to speak up punished, but they were also eliminated. According to his testimony, his father had contacts outside of the music business. Doctors would prescribe whatever was required, police officers would make charges go away, and hotel employees learned to turn off certain surveillance cameras on particular evenings. The first crack in Justin's voice came. He took a moment to gather himself before continuing. Gathering the evidence wasn't the most difficult part. It was coming to terms with the fact that my father, the man I loved and looked up to, was purposefully harming people, and that he expected me to do the same in the future. He related an incident from his 25th birthday, in which my father pulled me aside, expressed his pride in me, and predicted that I would soon be prepared to take charge. He then presented me with a fresh segment of that list. People my age, friends, co-workers, and even a person I dated were all people I knew. All of them were known to him. He referred to it as his inheritance. Justin's hands shook a little. I became aware of my options that evening. I could terminate it or I could become him. The middle way was no longer an option. When questioned about what made the difference, Justin explained a voicemail that he had stored. It came from a friend who had known our family well. One of the parties she had attended. She sounded frightened. I woke up somewhere, she said. She felt hurt, but she didn't realize that she couldn't recall what had happened. She was scared to phone the police, so she called me instead. How did she end up? The prosecutor inquired. She was gone for 2 weeks. She never stated that she had a new apartment and a new automobile when she returned. She stopped performing and attending industry functions that night as well. She returned to her parents' house in a different state last year, he said, glancing at the jurors. To understand my father's strength, consider how his own son could have been so hesitant to speak up for so long. Consider the number of people who are still frightened, mute, and stuck in his system. The judge gave Justin permission to address his father directly during his closing remarks. He got out of the witness chair, moved a few paces closer, and met his gaze. Out of fear, you created an empire. He started. You referred to it as success. The game was what you termed it. All you created was suffering, even if you called it family. Diddy remained silent. His lawyer whispered in his ear while he sat still. Justin remained still. I witnessed what you did to those individuals. I witnessed your treatment of me. You broke people for power, and I heard what you said when you thought I wasn't paying attention. Then Justin took some pictures of himself and his father as children out of his pocket. I was an idol of yours when I was 10 years old. I was a boy like that once. He presented it to the judge. He was worthy of better. If you think this is just about parties or business practices, you're not seeing the whole picture, Justin said to the jurors. This system is intended to control and silence, and it will continue if we don't stop it right away. Then, for the final time, he faced his father. Can't stop. Won't stop, you used to say. I'm going to stop it today, though. Without turning around, he packed up his belongings, walked back to the stand, and left the courtroom. For the first time in decades, he wasn't in charge of the story, so he sat there looking pallid, his fingers unblinking, his hands holding the table. Justin Combs did not appear to have won anything as he went off the witness stand. He had the appearance of someone who had at last found freedom. The courtroom remained tense, barely able to breathe. The judge seems shaken as well. For the first time during the trial, he appeared defeated, and some jurors had tears in their eyes. When Justin left, he didn't wave, he didn't pose, and he didn't say anything to the reporters. His head was held high as he left the courthouse, but the weight of a lifetime of silence weighed heavily on his shoulders. He reportedly said this in response to reporters' later question about whether he regretted testifying. "My only regret is that I didn't talk sooner." However, the world was just starting to respond outside the courtroom. There was a silent fear in the music business. Agencies suspended contracts after label executives held emergency meetings. Behind closed doors, artists who had previously worked with Diddy with pride were suddenly expressing shock and distancing. While many tried to act horrified, the internet was already doing what it does best, connecting the dots. Crisis teams were called in, and public relations firms circulated internal memos encouraging clients to erase any social media posts involving dirty content. Legal professionals soon started examining the ramifications. A well-known lawyer told CNN, "The emotional impact of a kid testifying against his father is not the only thing that makes Justin Combs' testimony so harmful. It's the thorough records he supplied, photographs, recordings, and journals. It's not hearsay. This is systematic evidence gathered over many years." Within hours, the stock values of businesses connected to Doty's numerous business endeavors fell precipitously. Companies that had endorsement agreements with him made announcements about halting their collaborations until the legal process was over. Industry insiders were aware that this situation could not be reversed. The rippling effect was what made the aftermath so noteworthy. 3 other witnesses who had previously refused to testify contacted the prosecution within 24 hours of Justin's testimony. Justin's example was inspiring courage in many who had previously been hesitant to speak. Support for Justin surged on social media. The hashtag that Justin spoke up about went viral all over the world. For the first time, several survivors of abuse in the industry told their own tales. Dirty was no longer the only topic. A cultural reckoning that had been simmering for decades was at issue. Videos where Diddy talked about preparing his kids for success as Justin stood silently next to him, and old interviews where Justin appeared uneasy close to his father reappeared, as did pictures where his smile stopped short of his eyes. The indications had always been there, and people were witnessing these times with fresh eyes. The response from other industry families was perhaps the most striking. Several well-known entertainment moguls' offspring publicly and subtly expressed their support for Justin by posting a quick remark on social media about supporting with people who speak truth to power. Little actions that implied there were other people with secrets besides Justin. Fans weren't only taken aback, they were encouraging of a son who had to make a difficult decision, encouraging his bravery in ending the cycle, and upset that a system had been silent for so long. Experts in child development offered their opinions on the psychological effects of growing up in such a setting. One psychologist said on a morning talk show that what Justin Combs described as basically grooming. He was methodically desensitized to actions that were immoral and possibly unlawful. He was coerced from an early age. It takes a great deal of strength to overcome such training. Security footage outside the courthouse revealed something the media had missed, namely the siblings' embrace as they waited for him. This betrayal was not limited to a single son. This family was attempting to return to reality. The day following his testimony, Justin shared a picture of himself as a child in black and white along with a single caption. It said in the caption, "Lies are heavier than the truth. Light is my choice." It became the most shared post on Instagram in a matter of hours. Within days, Justin was contacted by 3 prominent documentarians, but his representatives only released a brief statement. Justin gave his testimony to further justice, not to gain notoriety. At this time, he will not be involved in any media ventures. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if this story touched you. we provide you with up-to-date information on high-profile cases that is unparalleled in accuracy and depth. Back in the courtroom, Diddy's defense team frantically reorganized their plan, which was based on the devotion of family members and character witnesses. They moved to have Justin's evidence removed from the record on the grounds of emotional prejudice after he said that Foundation had collapsed in a last-ditch effort, because the two judges rejected it right away. According to legal observers, law schools would continue to use Justin's testimony for many years to come. A veteran prosecutor remarked, "It's uncommon to see evidence this comprehensive from an insider. In situations involving influential people, you typically end up with parts of the puzzle. The whole image was given by Justin Combs. The financial ramifications were enormous. The projected value of Diddy's empire had dropped by $500 million by the end of the week. In anticipation of the trial's verdict, businesses were concluding agreements, partnerships were breaking apart, and assets were being frozen. But the main topic of discussion was the human cost. They were people who had spent decades working with filth. Stories that supported Justin's testimony came from a former assistant who recounted seeing people change from self-assured to broken following private meetings, and a driver who recalled bringing up young people from hotels who couldn't recollect how they got there. A week following Justin's testimony, the prosecution summoned a surprise witness, the acquaintance Justin had mentioned, who had vanished after phoning him for assistance. This was possibly the most impactful moment. Delivered behind a privacy screen to conceal her identity, her testimony added heartbreaking details of her own, while confirming all Justin had claimed. The impact of Justin's testimony went beyond his personal life. The facade had been broken, and now the truth was leaking out of every nook and cranny of a sector that had long hidden secrets. The repercussions went beyond amusement. Politicians swiftly announced intentions to redistribute the money to survivors after accepting donations from Diddy's numerous foundations. Advocacy organizations. Across the country, institutions reacted fast to separate themselves. Universities with facilities named after Sean Combs had emergency board meetings, privately deliberating whether to take his name off plaques and lecture rooms. Meanwhile, mental health specialists reported an alarming rise of calls from assistants, past collaborators, and artists, many of whom had been silent for years. "What we're witnessing is a collective trauma response," said one therapist who works primarily with clients in the entertainment sector. "People who thought they were alone are now realizing they were never alone. This wasn't simply one person's sorrow, it was part of a much larger pattern." And while the public spotlight changed wildly from revelation to reaction, Justin Combs, Diddy's own son, retreated from view. Sources close to him claim he's been in therapy, reuniting with family members, and choosing recovery over headlines. "He didn't do this for attention," a longtime buddy explained. "He did it because it was the right thing to do." In legal circles, most experts now agreed. The case was unlikely to make it all the way to a jury verdict. The evidence was snowballing, so huge and interrelated that a plea deal felt nearly unavoidable. But even if the trial were to cease tomorrow, one thing was clearly clear. The court of popular opinion had rendered its verdict. That day, after court adjourned, something rare happened. The judge, typically quiet, impersonal by design, spoke directly and intimately. Her statements threw even seasoned court reporters off guard. "What we witnessed today," she added, "was not simply testimony. It was an act of remarkable courage." She stopped, then continued, departing from the impartial tone most judges are expected to maintain. "Let the record reflect," she added, "that this court acknowledges the personal cost of testifying against one's own blood, especially a parent. Mr. Justin Combs's determination to come forward despite the weight of the repercussions exemplifies the highest calling of our justice system, that truth must stand, even when power tries to bury it." The final image that day wasn't of Diddy in handcuffs. It wasn't of Justin Combs breaking down on the stand. It was the silent closing of the courtroom doors, an undeniable symbol that an era of silence, of intimidation, of protection for the powerful, had ended. And behind those doors, an entire industry was only beginning the long, terrible process of reckoning. As one culture critic observed in a now viral op-ed, Justin Combs didn't just testify against his father, he testified against an entire system, a system that chose power over people, profit over protection, and quiet over truth. And by doing so, he may have saved lives we'll never know about. Artists who'll never have to live what others did. Victims who'll never have to become survivors. There's no way to measure the kind of legacy that generates. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like real change may be possible.